Welcome to the deep dive. I'm looking at an absolute mountain of reading material on the desk today.
It is quite the stack.
It really is. I mean, literally stacks of reports, congressional transcripts, earnings calls, intelligence briefings. And I am so excited to welcome you to this custom-tailored exploration. We are looking at what might be, honestly, one of the most volatile, deeply interconnected stacks of sources we have ever attempted to unpack.
Without a doubt.
If you've been feeling lately like the news cycle is just, spinning faster and faster, blurring together until nothing makes sense, you're definitely not alone.
Absolutely not alone.
Today's mission is to act as your personal filter. We are going to connect the dots across a rapidly shifting global landscape. We are going to trace exactly how a major multi-billion-dollar geopolitical conflict in the Middle East is directly setting the price you pay at the gas pump on your way to work.
Right.
From there, we'll look at how the explosive and frankly sometimes completely glitchy growth of artificial intelligence is physically reshaping the tech world and putting massive strain on our energy grid.
Which is a whole situation on its own.
Oh, entirely. And finally, we are going to bring it all the way home to your personal finances, your taxes, your wardrobe, your daily life. Basically making sense of what all this macro-level chaos actually means for you.
Before we jump into this incredibly complex web of events, we really need to set the stage regarding the nature of the information we're covering today, because there is a lot here.
Yeah, please do.
As we navigate these sources, it is vital to note that we are not taking any political sides. Our goal is strictly to impartially report on the content provided in these sources, conveying the original ideas and viewpoints of the lawmakers and administrations mentioned without endorsing them.
Exactly.
We are looking at deeply polarized political actions from both the Biden and Trump administrations, as well as highly charged bipartisan congressional commentary on the U.S.-Iran war. Our role is purely analytical, breaking down the information so you can understand the mechanics of what is happening behind the headlines.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the geopolitical earthquake that is currently shaking the globe, which is the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran. Looking through this timeline in our notes, this conflict officially began on February 28th.
Right, February 28th.
And the landscape has already shifted dramatically. According to multiple intelligence sources we are tracking here, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is dead.
Which is a massive development.
Massive. But the human toll is also mounting on the American side, with 8 U.S. service members having been killed in action. And then, beyond the human cost, there is the sheer mind-boggling financial velocity of this conflict.
The numbers are staggering.
I am looking at a Washington Post report in our stack showing that the military burned through $5.6 billion in munitions in just the first 2 days alone.
$5.6 billion. In 48 hours.
Right. And taking it a step further, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, estimates that this war is currently costing roughly $891 million per day. Hang on. Almost $1 billion a day.
Yeah, $891 million.
What does that even look like practically? I mean, how do you even spend that much money in 24 hours?
It is a staggering figure, and it's crucial to really visualize what $891 million a day means in a theater of war. You aren't just paying for the explosives themselves. When you are burning through nearly $1 billion every single time the sun comes up, you are funding a monumental logistical supply chain.
So it's the whole infrastructure behind the strike.
Exactly. You have to factor in the jet fuel for continuous sorties, the hazard pay for the troops, the satellite surveillance bandwidth, and the massive naval deployments sitting offshore. But the bulk of it, the real money, is the replacement cost of high-tech weaponry.
Right, because these aren't cheap bombs.
Far from it. A single Tomahawk cruise missile costs around $2 million. Interceptor missiles used by defense systems can cost anywhere from $2 to $4 million a pop. If you are launching dozens or hundreds of these a day while simultaneously deploying bunker busters and smart bombs, the math escalates incredibly fast. You were talking about a continuous, massive outflow of capital just to replace the physical munitions being dropped or fired. And this brings us to the core tension we are seeing across these congressional transcripts, a massive disconnect in the expected timeline of this war.
Right, because reading through the administration's statements, they are painting a picture of a war that is practically in the rearview mirror.
They are.
President Trump recently stated that the war will end, quote, very soon, and that the military objective is very complete, pretty much.
Very complete.
Yeah. Then you have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth echoing this. He called today the most intense day of strikes and asserted that Iran is badly losing. The messaging coming out of the executive branch is all about a rapid, decisive victory. It sounds like they are packing up to come home.
That is the administration's projection.
Hmm.
But then you flip to the notes from lawmakers who just walked out of a classified briefing with military brass, and the narrative is completely inverted.
It's like they attended two different meetings.
Exactly. The people who are seeing the raw intelligence on the ground are sounding alarms. Senate Democrats are vehemently rebutting the administration's claims of a swift end. Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada specifically called the lack of an end game disturbing.
Disturbing is a strong word for a senator to use after a classified briefing.
It is, and she explicitly voiced fears of getting dragged into a forever war.
And it isn't just a vague anxiety about the timeline. Senator Mark Kelly, who is a retired Navy captain and astronaut, came out of that same briefing saying they do not appear to have a strategic goal, a timeline, or an exit strategy.
Coming from a military veteran, that carries weight.
Exactly. When a retired Navy captain says the military lacks a strategic goal, that is significant. And this isn't just political rhetoric for the cameras. It has immediate, tangible financial consequences.
Yes, it does.
Senator Elizabeth Warren stated she is a hard no on any supplemental funding. She is arguing that Congress needs to use the power of the purse to physically stop the action. But wait, if they are burning almost $1 billion a day, and Senator Warren and others are a hard no on funding, how does the military actually pay for tomorrow's munitions?
That is the big question.
Do we hit a literal wall where the bombs stop dropping because the check bounces?
That is exactly the crisis point. The military operates using existing stockpiles and pre-authorized defense budgets, but those run dry extremely fast at this operational tempo.
At almost $1 billion a day, I'd imagine so.
Right. If the administration needs to refill the munitions stockpiles and Congress is deeply divided on passing a supplemental budget, you can see a massive legislative bottleneck. The Pentagon cannot just conjure missiles out of thin air. Defense contractors need to be paid to manufacture them.
Of course.
Now, looking at the other side of the aisle, Republicans in Congress are largely supporting the effort and the expenditure. Senator Tim Sheehy, who brings the perspective of a former Navy SEAL, pointed out that the Iranian regime has essentially been at war with the U.S. through proxies for 47 years.
So his view is this is the culmination of a half-century conflict.
Exactly. His argument is that the goal here is to finally end that hostility once and for all. Senator Jim Banks acknowledged the high financial cost, but argued the trade-off is exponentially more valuable, calling the operation highly effective so far. So you have a deep partisan split, not just on the cost, but on the fundamental nature and timeline of this conflict.
It is fascinating to see how divided the room is, and it is not just politicians weighing in on this either. We have this really interesting transcript from the Yale CEO caucus down in Washington.
Yes, that was a crucial meeting.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog addressed a room full of top U.S. business leaders. We're talking about people like the CEOs of Pfizer, Booking Holdings, Lazard, the people who essentially run the global economy.
The power players.
Right. Herzog explicitly acknowledged their concerns about the financial fallout, saying that the cost to business is essentially the necessary price for Middle East peace. He described the current allied effort against Iran as a new NATO-like structure. I find that phrase, cost to business, so telling. He is not talking to generals about troop movements. He is talking to CEOs about their profit margins.
That phrase is the absolute linchpin here. Herzog is speaking directly to the anxieties of the global supply chain. He knows his audience.
He definitely does.
When a conflict like this erupts in the Middle East, corporate America gets incredibly nervous. They aren't just watching the news on television. They're watching their shipping routes, their transit insurance premiums, and their energy costs skyrocket.
Because it hits the bottom line immediately.
Immediately. Herzog is trying to reframe the short-term economic pain these companies are feeling as a long-term investment in regional stability. He is essentially saying, yes, your quarterly earnings might take a hit because shipping is a nightmare right now, but a pacified Middle East is better for your business in the long run.
And speaking of international dynamics and back-channel communications, there is another crucial piece of intelligence maneuvering happening in our sources. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff stated that Russia directly told President Trump they are not sharing intelligence with Iran.
Which is a major point of contention.
It is wild because that directly contradicts earlier reports from NBC News that suggested Russia was actively helping Iran target U.S. assets. Witkoff went on the record saying he and Jared Kushner heard this denial directly from Vladimir Putin's foreign policy advisor. It is just a massive web of claims, counterclaims, and geopolitical poker.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, All of this geopolitical posturing, the intelligence leaks, the CEO summits, they aren't happening in a vacuum. That cost to business that Herzog mentioned is playing out right this second in one of the most vital waterways on the planet.
The physical cost.
The primary cost is physical, and it is located in the Strait of Hormuz.
Which brings us to the physical economy. Looking at the maps in our source stack, everything hinges on this one tiny stretch of water.
Precisely. The Strait of Hormuz is the central artery of the global energy market. To put it in perspective, roughly 20% of the world's total petroleum consumption passes through that narrow choke point.
20%.
That is a fifth of the energy keeping the globe spinning, passing through a strait that is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. And right now, traffic is severely disrupted.
Because of the conflict.
Our reports show that massive container ships and oil tankers are literally sitting at anchor in the ocean. The operators are terrified of Iranian mines or direct drone attacks. The risk assessment firm Rapidan Energy is calling this the biggest oil supply disruption in history. You even have Saudi Aramco's CEO warning of catastrophic consequences if this bottleneck drags on.
And the market reaction has been absolute whiplash. I mean, imagine you are an energy trader trying to price this out. We saw oil prices surge past $100 a barrel, at one point nearing 120.
Which is recession territory pricing.
Absolutely. But then, almost instantly, it plummeted by 10 to 17%, dropping back down to the mid-80s. And the reasons for that massive drop are almost unbelievable. It wasn't because the war ended or the ship started moving.
Not at all.
First, you had President Trump publicly threatening to hit Iran 20 times harder if they blocked the strait. The market reacted to that threat. But the second factor, and this is where it gets crazy, was a social media post by Energy Secretary Chris Wright.
This part is truly fascinating.
He posted a video claiming that the U.S. Navy had successfully escorted an oil tanker safely through the strait. The algorithmic trading market saw that post, breathed a collective sigh of relief that the oil was flowing, and prices dropped off a cliff.
But the post wasn't true.
It was completely false.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had to scramble to the podium and correct the record, confirming that the Navy has not, in fact, escorted any tankers yet. The Department of Energy later issued a statement saying a staffer had incorrectly captioned a video.
A typo from a staffer.
What is truly fascinating, and frankly a little terrifying, is what this tells us about the fragility of modern financial markets. We don't have human beings in trading pits shouting buy and sell orders anymore.
No, it's all machines.
We live in an era of algorithmic trading, where supercomputers are programmed to scan social media for keywords from government officials. They see Energy Secretary, Navy, escort, and tanker, and they execute multi-million-dollar trades in milliseconds. A single, ultimately incorrect tweet from the Energy Secretary wipes 17% off the price of global crude oil in real time.
Imagine you are driving to work, and by the time you park your car, the global price of oil has dropped 17% because a computer read a typo on the Energy Secretary's social media. That is how wildly fragile the system dictating your gas prices is right now. It shows how desperate the market is for any sign of stability, and how divorced the pricing mechanisms have become from the actual physical movement of oil.
To try and artificially create some of that stability and bypass the panic, the international community is stepping in. We have notes here on emergency meetings being held by the IEA, the International Energy Agency, and the G7.
They're trying to coordinate a rescue.
For context, the IEA member countries hold about 1.2 billion barrels in emergency strategic reserves. They're currently discussing a joint release of 300 to 400 million barrels into the market. They're considering dumping 25 to 30% of their entire emergency safety net just to calm the waters and keep the global economy from seizing up.
But while the global markets are playing this high-stakes game of supply and demand, the impact is already hitting the consumer. Domestically, the average price of gas has spiked 60 cents in just a month, hitting $3.54 a gallon.
And that hurts everyone.
And that price at the pump is a massive political liability. It directly threatens the Republican Party's core messaging on affordability heading into the midterm elections. We have sources quoting lawmakers at a GOP retreat in Miami who are privately very concerned. They know voters vote with their wallets.
Always.
Representative Aaron Bean used a very relatable analogy down in Miami. He compared the war to street repair. He said it causes terrible traffic and congestion right now, and everyone hates the detours, but the hope is that when the cones are removed, you have a smoother, safer road. But the political gamble there is huge. Does the American voter, and more importantly their wallet, have the patience to sit in that financial traffic jam while waiting for this geopolitical repair to finish?
History suggests consumer patience runs out very quickly when the cost of living spikes. And it isn't just gas prices. This is where we have to look at the ripple effects. High oil bleeds into everything.
It's the base of the whole economy.
For example, the price of urea fertilizer has soared 15% since the fighting began. Most commercial fertilizer requires natural gas to produce, and it requires diesel fuel to transport. That means higher overhead costs for farmers. And those farmers pass that cost directly to the grocery store.
Right to the consumer.
So your bread, your vegetables, your meat, it all gets more expensive because of a war in the Middle East. Wells Fargo economists put out a very stark warning in our stack. They calculate that if oil sustains a price above $130 a barrel, it will trigger a full-blown recession. Their modeling shows that a 100% increase from the baseline price of oil would result in back-to-back quarters of contraction in consumer spending. People will just stop buying things.
The Fed is staring down a potential nightmare scenario right now. According to the financial analysts in our sources, they are facing a perfect storm of stagflation. Now, we all know the economy goes through cycles, but stagflation is a uniquely toxic brew.
It is the hardest economic condition to cure.
You have prices that are still painfully high at the grocery store and the gas pump, but the job market is simultaneously icing over. People are paying more, but they aren't getting raises or finding new jobs. The Fed usually has a standard playbook. If you want to boost jobs, you lower interest rates to make borrowing cheap. If you want to fight inflation, you raise interest rates to cool down spending.
Right, the traditional levers.
But what do they do right now? They are caught in a trap.
It is the ultimate Hobson's choice for monetary policy. If the Fed cuts rates to help workers and stimulate the softening labor market, they risk letting inflation run completely wild, exacerbated by these geopolitical energy shocks and new manufacturing tariffs.
Which hurts the consumer even more.
But if they keep rates high to fight that inflation, they crush an already stressed consumer who's relying on credit cards to pay for those expensive groceries. And to make this precarious balancing act even worse, the leadership transition at the Federal Reserve is completely paralyzed by politics.
This part of the source material reads like a political thriller. Kevin Warsh has been nominated to take over as Fed chair, presumably in May, but his confirmation is currently being blocked in the Senate by Senator Thom Tillis. And the reason why is wild.
It's highly unusual.
Tillis is flat out refusing to advance any Fed nominees until a criminal investigation into the current chair, Jerome Powell, is resolved. Powell claims this probe, which is ostensibly looking into a headquarters renovation project, is actually pure retaliation. Powell says it is punishment for him refusing President Trump's demands to slash interest rates earlier in his term.
A direct clash between the executive branch and the independent central bank.
Oh, and there is also a parallel attempt to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook over alleged mortgage fraud, which Senator Tillis dismissed as sophomoric and baseless. So the Central Bank of the United States is trying to navigate a global economic storm, staring down stagflation and an energy crisis, while its entire leadership pipeline is clogged by intense personal political infighting.
And you can see the toll this high interest rate, high inflation environment is taking on the physical economy right now. Let's look at the housing market data we have. February home sales are down 1.4% year over year. The median price is still sitting at a lofty $398,000.
Almost 400 grand.
Inventory is growing, but very sluggishly. It is taking longer and longer to sell homes. We are seeing a deep stagnation. Regular people simply cannot afford to move because borrowing costs are too high. They can't afford to buy because prices haven't dropped. And builders cannot afford to build because materials are expensive. The physical economy is essentially gridlocked.
Right. The physical economy is battling oil shocks, supply chain gridlock, and stagnant housing. But here's where it gets really interesting.
The pivot to digital.
Exactly. While the physical world is struggling to move ships and sell houses, the digital economy is spending money like it has a money printer in the basement. The artificial intelligence infrastructure boom is operating on a scale that is genuinely hard to comprehend. Let's look at Oracle's latest earnings report. They just posted a massive Q3 earnings beat.
Huge numbers.
Their cloud revenue was up 44%, and the report notes they're sitting on a backlog of $553 billion in remaining performance obligations. Wait, for those of us who don't spend our weekends reading cloud computing earnings reports, what does a $553 billion performance obligation actually mean? Is that just guaranteed future money sitting in an account?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
A remaining performance obligation is a metric companies use to show contracted revenue that hasn't been recognized yet because the service hasn't been fully delivered. It means clients, massive corporations, governments have legally committed to paying Oracle $553 billion over the coming years for cloud and AI services.
So it's locked in.
It is a staggering pipeline of guaranteed cash flow, and Oracle is using that cash to build at a terrifying pace.
Yeah.
They are raising $45 to $50 billion to build 10 gigawatts of AI compute power over the next 3 years.
10 gigawatts. We throw around these tech terms so much they lose their meaning. What is a gigawatt?
10 gigawatts is an astounding amount of power. For context, a single gigawatt is roughly enough to power 750,000 average American homes.
Wow.
Oracle is building digital infrastructure that will require the equivalent power of millions of homes purely for AI computation. But there is a deep, almost tragic irony in Oracle's success, outlined in these reports. Even as they rake in billions to build these massive AI data centers, they're simultaneously laying off their own human software engineers.
Wait, really? Why?
Because the very AI code generation technology they are hosting is now doing the work of those human engineers. They are restructuring their company into smaller groups because AI allows them to build and deploy more software in significantly less time. The creators are being replaced by their creation.
But relying on AI to write code isn't exactly a flawless system yet, is it? I mean, just look at the internal memos we have from Amazon. They are projected to spend $200 billion on AI capital expenditures this year. That is more than any of their tech peers. They are throwing everything at generative AI.
It's an all-in bet.
But integrating it into their legacy systems is causing absolute chaos. I have this memo from Dave Treadwell, a senior vice president overseeing Amazon's retail tech. He had to call an emergency internal deep dive meeting to address a string of what they call SEV1 outages.
For anyone outside the tech bubble, a SEV1 or Severity 1 incident is the highest level of emergency. It means critical revenue-generating systems are completely down. It is an all-hands-on-deck, wake the engineers up at 3 a.m. scenario.
And according to this report, for 6 hours last week, users couldn't check out, view prices, or access their accounts. Amazon was functionally broken for a quarter of a day. What does a SEV1 outage cost Amazon per minute in lost revenue? It has to be millions.
Easily.
And the culprit behind this massive failure, generative AI-assisted coding errors.
This is a massive contradiction synthesizing in real time across Silicon Valley. Tech giants are placing ultimate trust in AI to the point of laying off their human safety nets, the engineers, like we saw at Oracle. Yet that same AI is actively hallucinating bugs and causing catastrophic site outages for the largest retailer on Earth.
It's moving too fast.
Treadwell's internal memo noted that Gen AI tools were accelerating production changes and leading to unsafe practices. The AI is writing code faster than human reviewers can check it, and the safeguards haven't been fully established yet. They are now having to introduce what Treadwell calls controlled friction.
Controlled friction sounds like corporate speak for we need to slow down.
That is exactly what it is. It represents a major philosophical shift. They're essentially making senior human engineers act as babysitters to double-check the AI's work before it goes live. They're realizing that moving fast and breaking things doesn't work when the one you are breaking is Amazon's global checkout system.
And Amazon is fighting AI on another front, too. It's not just internal bugs, it's external bots. They just won a temporary court injunction against an AI startup called Perplexity. Perplexity has a browser tool called Comet, which is an AI shopping agent. The idea is that users could ask Comet to scour Amazon, find the best items, read the reviews, and even make purchases automatically.
A personal robotic shopper.
Right. But Amazon sued, claiming Perplexity was actively concealing its AI agents to scrape their proprietary data without authorization. Amazon argued this posed a security risk to customer accounts. But reading between the lines of the lawsuit, critically, it was messing with their advertising metrics.
That is the core of the lawsuit. This highlights how AI is fundamentally breaking the traditional internet business model. The entire internet economy is built on human attention eyeballs clicking on ads. Advertisers pay Amazon billions of dollars to put their products in front of human shoppers.
But if a bot is shopping...
Exactly. If AI bots are doing the browsing and the buying on behalf of the human who clicks the ads, the bot certainly doesn't care about a banner ad. If AI shopping agents become the norm, Amazon's wildly profitable advertising engine collapses.
It is a battle for the very nature of who uses the internet, but it goes deeper than just shopping bots. We are seeing the birth of entirely new digital ecosystems designed only for AI.
This is where it gets truly futuristic.
There is a fascinating development in our stack here. Meta just acquired a platform called Moltbook. It was built by a startup called OpenClaw, and it is essentially a viral social network built exclusively for AI agents. Humans aren't allowed to post. You cannot create a profile.
A social network just for bots.
Yes. Autonomous bots join via a specific link and then chat with each other to solve problems, share data, or complete assigned tasks. Elon Musk looked at this autonomous bot network where machines are socializing and collaborating without human input and called it the early stages of singularity, the theoretical point where AI surpasses human intelligence and control.
It sounds like science fiction, but it is happening right now. And the arms race to physically power these increasingly complex socializing agents is intense. Software needs hardware, and hardware needs electricity. NVIDIA, the undisputed king of AI chips, just made a significant investment into a startup called Thinking Machines Lab.
I saw that, founded by Mira Murati.
Yes, who used to be the chief technology officer at OpenAI. Part of the investment deal is that Murati's company will deploy at least 1 gigawatt of NVIDIA's new Vera Rubin systems. Again, there's that metric, another gigawatt of power, purely for AI servers.
And this demand for power is pulling the futuristic digital tech industry right back down into the messy physical reality of fossil fuels. AI is no longer just ethereal lines of code living in the cloud. It is a heavy industry. Look at Elon Musk's company, xAI. We have the environmental permit filings right here.
They're building a massive facility.
They just won approval from Mississippi state regulators to build a massive power plant utilizing 41 natural gas-burning turbines in South Haven. This plant is designed specifically to power their massive supercomputer data centers, which they have endearingly nicknamed Colossus and Macroharder, located just across the border in Memphis.
41 gas turbines is a massive industrial footprint.
So we've got the most advanced supercomputers on Earth, the literal early stages of the singularity, as Musk called it, and it is all being powered by a bunch of loud, smoggy gas turbines in South Haven, Mississippi. It is incredibly ironic. We are building the futuristic matrix, but we are powering it with 19th century industrial revolution technology.
It is a striking juxtaposition, and this industrial expansion isn't happening quietly. The local pushback is fierce. According to the legal filings we have, the NAACP and the Southern Environmental Law Center are actively protesting and preparing lawsuits against this xAI facility.
They are worried about the local impact.
Very worried. They are arguing that this plant will cause severe noise pollution and dangerous air pollution, specifically citing smog-forming nitrogen oxides and formaldehyde emissions affecting the surrounding low-income communities. They even accuse the state regulators of bulldozing the permit through on an election day specifically to silence community opposition while everyone was distracted.
A classic political maneuver.
So these tech billionaires, who are used to operating purely in the frictionless digital realm of Silicon Valley, are suddenly dealing with local zoning boards, emissions permits, and angry residents who can't sleep over the roar of jet engine-sized gas turbines powering a supercomputer next door.
It is the collision of the digital economy with the gritty reality of the physical environment. But perhaps the most consequential integration of AI right now isn't in retail or social media, it is happening within the government.
The defense sector.
According to defense tech reports, the Pentagon has launched an enterprise AI portal called GenAI.mil. They are now actively bringing in Google's Agent Designer tool. This allows the Defense Department's massive workforce of over 3 million civilian and military personnel to build custom AI agents for unclassified work. They are using it for mundane things right now, like drafting meeting notes, analyzing supply chains, or breaking down large logistical projects.
But the military's relationship with these AI companies is incredibly fraught and politically charged. At the exact same time, Google is deepening its lucrative Pentagon push. Another major AI heavyweight, Anthropic, is actively suing the Trump administration.
Over supply chain designation, right?
Yes, the government officially designated Anthropic as a supply chain risk. Now, that is a highly severe label that is usually reserved for foreign adversaries or hostile telecom equipment.
Wow.
Why did Anthropic get slapped with it? Because, according to the lawsuit, Anthropic firmly refused to allow their technology to be used for autonomous weapon systems or domestic surveillance operations.
Because of their ethical guidelines.
Because of their ethical stance on lethal AI. The Department of Defense essentially blacklisted them from their classified cloud computing environments, replacing their models with technology from OpenAI and Elon Musk's XAI.
So the government is picking winners and losers in the AI race based on who will let them build autonomous weapons.
Exactly. And this raises an important question about the future of global logistics and national security. With AI agents now having their own closed social networks like Moltbook to collaborate, and the military rapidly integrating custom AI to manage their sprawling bureaucracy, how soon until these autonomous agents are independently negotiating our defense supply chains?
That's a terrifying thought.
How long until an AI is making procurement decisions for the very munitions we discussed earlier? We are handing over the keys to immensely complex, vital national security systems before we've even figured out how to stop the AI from crashing an Amazon shopping cart.
We've been talking about the massive scale of gigawatt data centers, billion-dollar defense budgets, and algorithmic oil markets.
Yeah.
But there is a micro level to this chaos, too. So what does this all mean for you? Because macro-level policy shifts always flow downstream directly into your bank account.
They absolutely do.
Let's start with your taxes. If you are a very high earner making over $1 million, our tax analysts note that you have actually already finished paying your Social Security payroll taxes for the entire year of 2026. Because the tax is capped at $184,500 of income. Once you hit that number, you stop paying in.
By early March, they are done.
Experts in our sources are pointing out that as the Social Security Trust Fund faces total depletion by 2032, which, by the way, could result in a mandatory 24% cut to everyone's benefits, this income cap is becoming a massive point of contention.
Economic researchers note that the share of national earnings subject to this payroll tax has dropped significantly since the 1980s. The reason is simple. Wage growth has been heavily concentrated at the very top. The wealthiest are making much more, but they aren't paying Social Security taxes on the vast majority of it.
Which puts the burden on the middle class.
There is a growing legislative push to lift that cap entirely, ensuring the wealthy pay into the system on every dollar they earn all year long, just like a median wage worker does. But right now, the system creates an incredibly regressive dynamic where a billionaire is completely done paying into the social safety net by New Year's Day, while the middle-class worker is squeezed on every paycheck year-round.
And speaking of tax season nightmares, while billionaires are hitting their caps, everyday taxpayers are dealing with a terrifying new trend. Mysterious 1099s appearing in their mailboxes.
This is a devastating scam.
This is employment identity theft, and it is rampant in the gig economy. Scammers are stealing Social Security numbers, but they aren't doing it to open credit cards. They are using your identity to get hired for gig jobs like driving for Uber or delivering for DoorDash. The scammer does the work and collects the cash directly to their bank account, but because they use your SSN, the IRS thinks you earned that money.
It's incredibly hard to untangle.
We read a heartbreaking case study about a man named Waris Bakari. He opened his mail during tax season to find a 1099 tax form from Uber saying he made $2,317 driving for them. He has never driven for Uber in his life. He called the experience a terrible reverse lottery.
This is such a devastating scam because the burden of proof falls entirely on your shoulders right when you are trying to file your taxes. Imagine the sheer bureaucratic nightmare of trying to prove a negative to the IRS. You have to convince a massive federal agency that you didn't earn money that has your literal Social Security number attached to it.
How do you even prove that?
It requires police reports, affidavits, and months of fighting with gig companies who are notoriously difficult to reach. It is a massive drain on the consumer's time and sanity.
And speaking of a drain on the consumer's wallet, we have to talk about student loans. Millions of borrowers just experienced intense financial whiplash. A federal appeals court, the Eighth Circuit, officially ordered the end of the Biden-era SAVE plan. This was an income-driven repayment plan that had dramatically lowered monthly bills for millions of people, sometimes to zero. People had structured their monthly budgets around these lower payments.
But with President Trump's new legislative package, the one big, beautiful bill overhauling the system, the SAVE plan is being phased out entirely. Borrowers are essentially being forced back into older, less generous income-based repayment plans. The policy shift is abrupt.
The impact is going to be huge.
The Institute for College Access and Success estimates the financial impact, and it is severe. For a median U.S. household of 4, making roughly $81,000 a year, their monthly student loan bill is projected to jump from $36 under the SAVE plan to a staggering $440 under the old rules.
That is over $400 a month disappearing from a family's budget overnight. Where does a family making $81,000 find an extra $400 when grocery prices are inflated due to fertilizer costs and gas is spiking? They don't. They just stop spending on other things.
Exactly. When you synthesize that sudden loss of disposable income with the stagnant housing market we discussed, where people are trapped by high interest rates, and the persistent inflation at the grocery store, you see a consumer base that is being severely financially squeezed from all sides by macro policy shifts.
It changes how they act.
It does. And you can see how consumers are reacting to this squeeze by looking at how they spend their remaining discretionary income. The cultural trends follow the money. Make the retail sector, the athleisure boom, the era of living in yoga pants, sweatpants, and soft clothing that absolutely dominated the pandemic years, is definitively cooling off.
I found this detail in the retail report so interesting. Fabletics, a massive athletic wear company that made over $1 billion last year selling leggings, is suddenly pivoting to launching a denim line. Why denim?
Because consumer psychology is shifting.
People are experiencing post-pandemic soft dressing fatigue. Corporations are mandating a return to the office, consumers are heading back into public spaces, and they are demanding real structured clothes again. They still want the stretch and comfort they got used to on their couches, but they want the outward appearance of professionalism. It shows that the consumer mindset has fundamentally shifted away from the bunker mentality of the early 2020s. We are trying to armor up and get back to normal life, even if our budgets are tighter.
We are also seeing significant, life-altering developments on the health and pharmaceutical front. The FDA just approved a decades-old chemotherapy vitamin called leucovorin as the first treatment for a rare genetic mutation called cerebral folate deficiency.
But there is a political angle to this, too.
There is. What's notable in the regulatory filings here is the political pushback embedded in the approval. The Trump administration had previously touted this exact drug as a broad miracle cure for general autism symptoms. Those political claims spiked off-label prescriptions wildly.
People were desperate for a cure.
Yes. The FDA specifically narrowed this new approval, issuing statements clarifying that there isn't sufficient clinical data to prove it works for general autism. They are actively reining in political health claims with strict clinical trial data.
And in other pharmaceutical news, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, a company known almost exclusively for their life-saving cystic fibrosis drugs, just had a massive phase 3 trial success for a kidney drug called povetacicept. This is huge for them because it proves to investors that they can diversify their pipeline beyond just one disease space, which naturally sent their stock soaring.
And finally, a quick note on travel for anyone trying to book a spring vacation. Keep an eye on Spirit Airlines. They're currently trying to claw their way out of their second bankruptcy filing, and they just desperately recalled 500 furloughed pilots.
Second bankruptcy. That's rough.
During the height of their financial distress, they furloughed these pilots to save cash. But the attrition rate was so unexpectedly high, so many of those pilots just quit and went to fly for Delta or United, that Spirit was suddenly facing a crippling staffing shortage heading into their busy season.
It's the perfect microcosm of a company trying to cut costs but accidentally cutting straight into the bone. They tried to save $1 on payroll and almost grounded their own fleet.
It absolutely is. And honestly, it reflects the broader theme of today's entire deep dive across all these topics, unintended consequences.
Let's do a quick recap of the massive ground we covered today. We started in the Middle East, looking at a geopolitical war that is burning nearly $1 billion a day, deeply benefiting U.S. politicians on whether there is an exit strategy, and causing top CEOs to sweat the cost to business. We tracked how that conflict choked the Strait of Hormuz, sending algorithmic oil markets into an absolute frenzy over a single deleted tweet and threatening the entire U.S. economy with stagflation.
Is all interconnected.
Then we pivoted to the tech world, where companies are spending hundreds of billions on AI, laying off the humans who built it, fighting environmental lawsuits to build gigawatt gas plants to power their servers, and watching autonomous bots form their own closed social networks. Finally, we brought it home to the squeeze on your wallet, from millionaires hitting tax caps early to victims fighting Uber tax scams and families facing $400 jumps in their student loan bills while they trade in their sweatpants for denim.
We spent a lot of time today talking about energy. The physical oil blockades in the Middle East causing havoc, and the massive gigawatt-hungry natural gas data centers being built here at home. As AI agents began socializing on their own networks, writing their own code, and integrating into our retail and military systems, I want to leave you with this to consider.
I love this part.
What happens when the artificial intelligence we are building becomes smart enough to realize that its very survival depends entirely on the same fragile geopolitical energy grid that we humans are currently fighting over.
That is a wild, slightly terrifying thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember to keep digging, keep questioning the information around you, and we will catch you next time.